Welcome to the World Hope Forum East Africa edition.
My name is Idoki Karu. I'm a musician, a performer.
My name is Kevin Mochiro. I'm a writer, podcaster, and someone who's on this journey trying to discover what joy is.
My name is Jonas Tadesse. I'm born and raised in Addis Ababa.
Thank you, Lilly, so much for having me on the platform.
The program has been really great so far.
I'm really looking forward to our chat right now. I've really enjoyed it so far.
It's amazing to see this chat. I think we have every corner of the world covered.
Salam, good people, wherever you are listening to us, can I ask for your help? Would you share this episode and would you subscribe? You have no idea how much it helps us. It helps us stay on the air. It helps people who are looking for African-focused, positive content to find us. And most importantly, it gives more space to the amazing people who share their stories on Selam Hello. So two things, subscribe, and secondly, please share our work to every cousin you got. We are so grateful. Asante sana, namaste natin. Salam and hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2026 season of Salam and Hello. I am so happy that you are here, that you're back. Maybe some of you have been wondering where we have been. Well, we've been busy. We have been traveling and engaging with stories across the continent, but we couldn't be happier to be back with you today, back in conversation about all things Africa, the diaspora, and all things joy and justice. Truly, the values haven't changed, the ideas have evolved, but I'm still here, you're still here, and so we are just thrilled to be back in conversation with all of you. And in fact, today we're starting off this season by showing you a little bit of where we have been. In February, I was honored to be asked to curate the first World Hope Forum for Africa, the first of its kind here on the continent, and it was my great joy and privilege to think about who are the voices, who are the creators and writers and those dedicated to their craft who could bring us a bit of hope. Well, my friends delivered for you, my friends. It was such a beautiful webinar. We had 8 distinct voices from across the region, from Sudan, from Eritrea, from Ethiopia, from Kenya, voices who brought us such interesting insights about how they are creating hope in their world. And we had a theme. That theme was culture as power, joy, and source. Isn't that beautiful? That quote comes from the thinking of revolutionary leader Amilcar Cabral, one of my absolute heroes in this life, so much so that we named our son after him. He said that culture is an essential element of the historical process. It is culture that allows a people to survive, to resist, and to create. Isn't that beautiful? To survive, to resist, and to create. And the World Hope Forum gave us an abundance of culture. Today's episode is going to feature one voice in particular from that conversation. Katungulu, famously known as Katush, one of Nairobi's most well-known and appreciated designers, creative leaders, and thinkers, really mesmerized us with her words at the World Hope Forum. She talked about identity and culture. She talked about sitting in a circle of women and what they taught her about her personhood, about motherhood, about creative living and life. I mean, at the end of her talk, which had about 500 people listening in from all over the world, we were in tears. There were comments in the chat from listeners in Brazil, in Croatia, in the United States, here in Nairobi, and the sentiment was universal, that we all left feeling hopeful after her beautiful, beautiful insights. So her conversation is featured here today, but you can find all 7 other voices, including me, in the playlist that we've curated for you on YouTube. So please go there. If you haven't subscribed already, this is the perfect time to get your subscription in, and you can listen into everybody's insights at the 2026 World Hope Forum for East Africa. Culture as power, joy, and source. Enjoy. I saw somebody in the comments say that fashion is a safe place too, and I love that sentiment. And on that note, I get to introduce our next speaker today. Her brand is called Katush Nairobi, but Katungulu Mwendwa is a storyteller of epic proportions when it comes to fashion and textile and the region. I first came to her work as a fan, somebody who just enjoyed her work and wanted to have it, and I do now. But I have come to really respect her as a leading voice and a North Star for those in the fashion industry about what sustainable supply chain looks like, what honoring culture and crediting culture for who they are, communities for who they are throughout Africa and the region. On the global stage, Katush's work and perspective has been featured in Vogue USA, Vogue Italia, OK Africa, Forbes Africa, CNN, and so on and so forth. But one thing I love is that she calls her journey an investigation, an exploration into the core of human perception within history and culture. What a beautiful way to talk about fashion, to talk about storytelling when it comes to textile and art and design. So Katush, thank you for being here with us. Thank you for creating space after space that celebrates culture and power and source and joy in so many ways. Karibu, and thank you for being with us tonight.
Oh my, good evening or good morning. Thank you, Lily, so much for that wonderful introduction and for having me on the platform. When you initially shared the theme with me about culture as joy, power, and source, taken from Amilcar Cabral's quote, my first thought was like, this is easy. It turns out not so much. I've really had to put my thoughts into structure. And so I want to begin with something personal. So for years, I've been quietly asking myself a question. Who am I culturally? When I first began my work, I tried to answer that question in simple ways. I would list things that felt Kenyan to me, like Tusker the bear. For those of you who are Kenyan, you know where I was going. Our sense of humor, mixed tea served at all gatherings, formal, informal. The way we sometimes hold hands and dance at the beginning of meetings. The importance of prayer before starting a task. And I would ask myself, is that what being Kenyan really is? Or are those just habits? Because culture has to be deeper than habit. Then the question became a little bit more uncomfortable. What if my identity as Katungulu had not been shaped by colonial interruption? If our rituals, language, objects, and memories had been allowed to evolve uninterrupted into the present, who would I be today? What would my aesthetic instincts be? What would feel natural instead of inherited? What would our systems of making look like? I grew up in Nairobi from a relatively privileged background. I went to British system schools. I grew up watching Japanese anime. I studied abroad and traveled often. I moved through a globalized environment. So I wasn't without culture, but I was absorbing multiple ones at once. And I often felt suspended between them. On one hand, I felt that parts of my identity had been disrupted by history. On the other hand, the Nairobi I know is vibrant, layered, sophisticated. It is not empty of culture. It is producing culture constantly. We are not culturally void, we are culturally hybrid. And that hybridity is not weakness. But it does raise questions about authorship. Who defines what we value? Who defines what we wear? Who defines what is considered refined? That tension stayed with me. And in the past few years, that question has deepened in a new way. I recently married a South Sudanese American, and I now have a son. And I found myself wondering, what will culture mean to him? How will he grow up between lineages? He will grow up between lineages, between countries, between histories shaped by displacement and survival, between Nairobi and elsewhere. He will inherit multiple narratives. And one day, he will ask the same question. Who am I? And what I hand him cannot just be objects. It must be understanding. That realization has shifted something in me. I am no longer only designing for a market. I am thinking about inheritance. I am also not able to be as present at the helm of my brand as I was before, because motherhood has forced slowness. And in that slowness, I've had to sit with my thinking instead of constantly producing. And I've realized culture cannot only be something we inherit passively. It must be something we participate in consciously. Because the generation after us will not only inherit our objects, they will inherit our decisions. They will inherit what we choose to preserve, what we choose to reinterpret, and what we allow to disappear. When I was younger, my grandmother left me some traditional jewelry from our people, from East Africa, the Akamba people. At the time, I didn't understand its importance. And today I think about it often. It holds very little commercial value in the current markets. Few people can explain its motifs or shapes. Its symbolism has faded. And yet it feels so powerful to me. Why? Is it the memory of my grandmother? Is it the beauty of the object itself? The thinking behind its development? The hands that made it? Or the community it once signified? That question began to change how I see culture. As East Africans, aside from places like Ethiopia and Eritrea with long-standing textile traditions, our relationship with dress has often been deeply rooted in adornment. Adornment as language, adornment as archive, adornment as marking. Adornment signified age, status, transition, belonging. And then I had an experience that clarified something for me. I spent an afternoon weaving with women from my home village, known for their sisal basketry. It's called a kyondo. You should look it up. We sat in a circle, we drank tea, we ate mandazi, which is like a pastry of some sort. We opened in prayer. Blessings were spoken over my hands, over my work, that would bring opportunity and prosperity, not just to me, but to the community. We moved between Kiswahili and Kikamba, a language I sadly don't speak fluently. When we encountered technical challenges, we paused and discussed them collectively. Solutions were offered from lived experience across generations. Mothers and grandmothers eventually left to care for their families. And we returned the next day and the day after that. And I really realized something important. Culture was not the basket. It was the circle. It was the process, the conversation, the prayer, the intergenerational exchange, the collective problem solving, and the shared authorship. That is joy. Joy not as entertainment, but as participation. And that is power. Because culture is not static heritage. It is participatory creation. That realization changed how I approach my work, or how I choose to approach it moving forward. I stopped asking, what does African fashion look like? And I started asking, how is it made? Who participates? How is meaning embedded? How can people leave their mark? If culture is memory, ritual, language, and objects, then which of these allows us to redefine our relationship with what we create? When culture becomes surface, it feels like it becomes trend. When culture becomes source, it shapes process. It shapes collaboration, it shapes value systems, it shapes economics, and it shapes ownership. Culture allows a people to survive through memory, to resist through self-definition, and to create through participation. For me, culture is not nostalgia. It is not something I can reach for only as aesthetic reference. It is something I build from. It lives in process. It shapes the systems beneath the object. So when I think about culture as joy, power, and source, I think about that circle. Shared tea, spoken blessings, people solving problems together. Objects that carry more than one decoration, they carry story. The question is not whether culture survives. The question is whether we are intentional about how we build from it. And yeah, thank you. That is what I wanted to share with you today, just the thoughts that I've been having over the last few years. And yeah.
What a gift.
What a gift, man. This is the circle of the whole world forum is speechless after your speech. Thank you so much.
Katush, we should have kept you for last because now we're all destroyed. But thank you. Culture is the circle. How beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Just not enough words. Asante dada. That was beautiful and heartfelt and true. Thank you. Thank you for that.
People trying to move along. Maybe one day we'll get onto something. Until then we say, hold on. I know it's hard, but baby, you just